Now we have some people that are still missing. Okay, we had a question about the Bologna Process Certificate. So for those of you who were not here, if you are interested in earning the Bologna Process Certificate, you have to go on and register for it. It doesn't cost you anything, but we need you to go through the formal registration process so that you're in the TAICEP system. And if you do that today or tomorrow, Robert Prather, the executive director, has been emailing me. I know we had at least one person who's registered today, so I will know that you have done that. So in order to earn the certificate, once again, you have to sit for and pass an online examination of knowledge. We have 100 questions in the question bank. They're all based on this workshop, and there might be, maybe there aren't some questions that you'll have to do some independent research for. You'll be assigned 50 questions randomly, so that means everybody will have different questions, so you can't go and ask your friend to help you with the answers because they might not have those questions, okay? So 50 questions randomly assigned from a question to 100 question bank. You must pass 70% or 35 of the questions. You can start the exam and stop it, start it, stop it, start it, stop it, as long as you want. We have people that have been taking some of our other certificate exams for at least a year. They still haven't finished them, but they're technically registered. So you must take the exam before November 20th. After that, you'll have to pay the fee. Okay, so you don't have to do it now. You can go back, take the weekend. So once again, if you have not registered for it, please go through it. In the email I sent you last week, it has the link to register for the workshop, for the certificate. Is that clear? And again, if you take the exam and you pass it before Wednesday, or i.e. before I can get to a print shop and get a certificate printed, I will give you the certificate on Wednesday. It would be really great if I could give out at least one to show that we had some people that could show that they learned things. Okay? Clear? Phew. Okay. Let me get my coffee and stuff. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, let's get that one. Okay, so another key feature of ECTS is, and this is the one we know most in our work, in our professional lives, is the transfer of credit. So it means that credits earned in one institution or one program, because students can transfer between programs in their institution, will be recognized at face value. Okay, they'll be recognized. Students might have to take extra work because that other program requires them, but those credits will transfer in. And so this is probably the biggest key to student mobility within the Bologna signatory countries, is having your credits recognized, and credits you earned one place recognized in a different institution. Now, their institutions will have agreements with other programs, similar to in the United States that we call, articulation, thank you. Articulation, where, we're going to have an agreement with Kate's University is going to have an agreement with Marianne's University that we're going to automatically recognize everything that student did. So that's another facet of the transfer credits with ECTS. So how are these ECTS credits documented? Well, they're going to be documented in the interest of transparency. How many credits are you going to earn for each course? And these will be documented in things like a course catalog. It'll be in a learning agreement between the student and the professor. They could be listed on transcripts. They could be listed on their diploma supplement, or they could be listed on a certificate a student earns after they finished a work placement. So once again, how you're going to earn these ECT credits is very transparent in there. We could I don't know about you, but we're constantly going on university websites to figure out how many ECTS credits are required for a particular program, especially for students who haven't finished a program, so they won't necessarily have a diploma supplement. So they'll also be listed on university websites as it's technology. So the whole ECTS grade system. So how does everybody understand being graded on a curve? Okay. For those of you who haven't been educated in North America, there's this bell curve, which means the majority of the students are going to earn a C, fewer students are going to earn an A, few more will earn a B, fewer will earn a D, and then fewer will earn an F. So the same thing has been done with the ECTS grading scale. So as you can see, is this nice? Oh yeah, here. We have a little pointer thing. Okay. Yeah. So you can see that, once again, that they expect that the majority, 30% of students are going to earn a C, okay? And that's the percentage. So the problem is there is this ECTS grading scale, but transcripts can also list the national grading scale in a country, and can also list the institutional grading scale in a country. So we have an example of that. We're going to be go look on this, but the other thing that is always a question for me is E is considered the minimum passing grade. They also have this grade of FX, which means, yeah, technically they failed, but maybe if they do some more work, we're going to pass. So that's always a question of how do you deal with that grade? How do any of you deal with a grade? Like, I'm just curious, this grade of FX. I mean, F is a clear fail. You know, they just didn't pass muster. They just didn't do it. But the FX means, maybe they could. Yeah.
We deal with that as a fail, but perhaps it should be a D.
Well, I'm just asking what you do. It's just this little conversation about what you think. I won't tell you what we do, because I don't think we really do. Do we know Stephen? Stephen's my colleague, so he's going to report back on what I'm doing here.
I had a question, actually.
Okay.
So an institution doesn't need to be recognized in their home country, but they're still allowed to use ECTS credits.
Anybody can use ECTS credits. It's not,
We are not to be allowed by anyone.
yeah.
It's a system.
So it's not proprietary, so you're
No.
Okay. So anyway, so that's a whole issue that you and your institutions have to figure out what you're going to do with the FX grade. Technically, we would say they're failed because it's failed. You know, they still need some work. That's how we would deal with it. If they came back and retook the course and showed that they passed, then we would consider it passed. But for us, a fail is a fail.
May I add something?
Yes, sure.
But if you...
There's always a but.
Yes, of course. You can use ECTS. You can say my course is that number of ECTS. But if you use the formal way that were taken in a formal higher education system, national level by law, for the ECTS, you cannot. I make you an example. We take the ECTS system in Italy. We put on our legislation, university legislation, and we call the credit, one credit that is comparable to the ECTS, we call Credito Formativo Universitario, CFU, university credit, in a sense. And it means that only Italian universities can award CFU, okay? That are ECTS. If I had to translate, I used ECTS. But if you are not recognized, you cannot say, I award the CFU. Is that correct? Is that understandable? Okay. And so all the legislation take the ECTS system and put in their law, and then they decide what they do. But consider that is a system, any institution can use it.
I've got examples.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so the problem is that a lot of times institutions list their own credit system or the national credit system in addition to, the grading scale, in addition to the ECTS grading scale. So that's can be an issue for you or us as we look at a grading scale or grades that a students earn. So which one do you use? The problem is that students are often shortchanged when the national system is converted into the ECTS system. Meaning that their national grades also are considered at a lower level than they would be if they had just, they would be considered at a lower level in the ECTS system compared to what they would have been if they have never been converted. So the problem is that, and I guess the solution is that you should always be consistent, and consistent within an institution, consistent within a system. So if you, for example, get this transcript that Spantran got, this is from a Turkish institution, the Izmir University of Economics. This is in the handouts you got. This will be in you see it easier in the actual workshop materials. But you can see here they got an ECTS grade and then their own grade. And then they also have, on the back of it was an explanation of how they converted these grades. So this was Izmir. As we know, in Turkey there are several different grading scales. There's really not one, so each institution creates their own grading scale. This is how the Izmir University of Economics converted their grading scale to the ECTS scale. Now, once again, you have to decide, are you going to use the ECTS grade or the Izmir grade? And once you decide, you need to be consistent between, if you always get Izmir University of Economic transcripts, you have to be consistent so that you always have the same system, same grade you come up with when you do your grade conversions and GPA. Yes?
But Kate, that could be from the North American point of view. Because if you were a signatory of the Lisbon Convention, then you would have to use the ECTS.
Is that true? Do you have to? No.
May I
Okay,
add something?
please.
No. For the grade. Oh, okay. She asked if we have to use the ECTS grade, you said, right? Because we are a signatory of Lisbon. No. Also because the ECTS are not part of the Lisbon, are part of the Bologna process. But I make you another example. My suggestion is really an Italian position, or my personal position is to use and to see and check the national grades, not the conversion. Why? Because for the conversion, they take into account an average of the institution and the grades of the institution for the single disciplines. Is a Gaussian? Okay, perfect. Okay.
It's called the bell curve.
Perfect. But what about a country like my country where the failed exams are not reported in any transcript? It means that if it is an average, we show that we have grade highest than others because we don't collect the not pass, okay? And they are not part of the final calculation. So please note that for the grades, my experience is to take into account the cultural, the academic culture of the country. The last example, France. You know that to obtain 20 in France is absolutely impossible, but it's the maximum grade. So when we convert something, we consider 18 as a maximum there because it's an academic culture that they have. So grades is something that I don't believe that the ECTS can solve all the problems. So my suggestion is to use the national ones. This is my idea.
And where would you find it?
Where you find, the national grade, usually they're listed on the diploma supplement. They will list the national grades. You can also go on It takes a lot of searching. You can find the grading scale on the university websites. It takes, believe me, it takes a lot of hunting and knowing which words to use, and especially if it's in a non-English, for example, is knowing which terms to use in that language, and then using Google Translate and a lot.
We have a database on our website.
Yeah. Well, and Chimea has a wonderful website with all the national grading scales. Okay? In English, yes. And we do use yours. I disagree with some of them, but we use it a lot.
No, because it was made in 2012. So.
Okay. Yes?
So, I've heard your observations about using the ECTS grade scale versus the national scales, and that's great. But I was wondering if you had any reservations of using the original national credit units versus the ECTS units, because both of those will also show up.
That's the same thing. You have to decide whether you're going to, and we're going to show that too. You have to decide whether you want to use ECTS credits or the credits that were the native institution credits.
But there is only one example of that. UK.
I've got that right here. You're ahead of me. I've got the UK here.
With that difference. But
Yeah.
anyway.
So here's an example of the University of Derby, or I guess it's Derby. I'm sorry. There's a city in a suburb of Philadelphia that's Derby, but it used to be Derby, but they changed the spelling so it would be pronounced correctly. But anyway, this shows again. This is the Derby grade, the credits, and the ECTS. They give you their whole grading system and descriptors. So another example of an institution. Now, this is the one, I don't know, I think, was it this, you found this one, Stephen? I believe, yes, Stephen found this one. This is a really good one. Yeah, it's from Russia. We had 3 different grading scales. So we've got ECTS, we've got, oh, I'm sorry, we have 4 scales. ECTS, a 0 to 10 scale, the 5-point scale we usually see in Russia, and a pass-fail scale. So which one do you use? We're just using, we decided as Spantran, we just use the Russian, the words and scale. That's what we always use. Oh, Luke approves, yeah. Yeah, because not every institution in Russia is using ECTS grades, so we just want to be consistent in our evaluation, so we always use that 5 to 3 wording scale for Russia. Okay. So this is a little bit more the meat of this presentation, and I think this is something that people are really want to talk about and get more information on, is the whole system of degrees. Yes, you had a?
I had a question thinking about how to get some study abroad students that are coming over from Europe. They need to fill out their learning agreements and they need to convert what our courses are in Canada in ECTS credits to their institution. So that's how to, just trying to think of consistency and how to get those credits aligned.
So you're talking about the actual credits and not the grades? Okay, well, we're going to be talking about that. Okay, so that'll give you some help in trying to figure out how you would convert ECTS credits to a Canadian standard. Okay. So first of all, as part of the 1999 Bologna Declaration, they determined that, yeah, we wanted to have, in our educational systems, we want a 2-cycle system. The first cycle would be undergraduate study, and the second cycle would be graduate study. So in that second cycle, they lumped together what we would consider master's programs and doctoral programs. They didn't distinguish between those in the second cycle. Well, in 2003, at the Bologna follow-up group, the 2003 BFUG, they decided we're going to added an additional cycle, the third cycle, which would be strictly doctoral studies. So they broke that out from the previous 2-cycle broke that up, the doctoral programs, and then there's now what we see now, the 3-cycle system within the Bologna process. So, excuse me. And then I should also add, and I'm going to talk about this a little later, in 2003, they also determined that short cycle programs, and I'm going to go over those, would be part of the first cycle. So, anyway, first cycle programs are between 180 ECTS credits to 240, and there are a lot of variations. If you look in the addendum that we sent you, Chart 1 has a list of each country and the number of ECTS, the minimum, this is minimum, not the top, the minimum number of ECTS credits for first cycle programs. And there's also another column that says the percentage of the programs. So even though it says, for example, we'll look at Andorra as its first one, the minimum number of ECTS credits for the first cycle is 180, but this isn't only 90% of the programs. So there could be programs that require more than 180 for first cycle programs. So this is a really handy chart to look at for you to determine. We should also point out too that there are a couple of different things. So Belgium has, there are two different signatories, right? We had the Flemish community and the French community. So they both have, for example, they both have the same number of credits, 180 for the first cycle programs. So just keep that in mind. So it depends on where in the country that the institution is located in Belgium. There could be different requirements for the ECTS. Okay. I should also note that Kazakhstan is the only country that has an odd number of credits. So you're going to see all of them have at least 180 or 240, but Kazakhstan has 231. But it was based on their previously 146 national credits were required, but they decided that it would be 231 ECTS credits. And it was also, at one time, 240 ECTS was the minimum, but they changed it to 231 for their first cycle. So keep that in mind. That's the only countries, Kazakhstan has that odd number, not an even number. Okay, so second cycle programs are what we would consider, well, I won't say that. Second cycle programs follow first cycle programs. In most countries, 120 credits are required to earn a second cycle qualification. And I'm talking in generalities now. And again, we do have a chart for that. I do have some statistics. 60 to 75 ECTS credits are required in half of the countries. I'm talking programs in countries, okay? Even though in the country itself, it might be 120, specific programs might have a lower number of ECTS credits required to earn a second cycle. So be very careful that just because you see a second cycle program in a particular country and you say, oh yeah, I know that's always 120, it might not be. Look at the program, and that will be listed on the diploma supplement. We'll tell you how many credits are required to earn that. 90 ECTS credits are used in the programs in half the countries. And if you look at chart 2 in the handouts, it tells you the second cycle program length by country. And I should give the caveat, this is as of 2016, 2017. I couldn't find any statistics that had been collected since then, so maybe they're in the process.
We published in 2020 with the report on
Okay.
the next one.
Perfect. So in 2020, we'll have the next cycle. So until then, these are the numbers that we found. So you'll see that once again, it's by percentage of programs. They're all over the place. And once again, Kazakhstan uses their own system. I could not find the minimum number for them. Yes? Well, we're not going to really discuss dual degrees. Like I said, if we had 8 hours, we could drill down even deeper into dual degrees and really drill down. But we had just have to, that would be a great session for TAICEP next year. All right, so
And
once,
only to, sorry, to be clear, dual degree is very US or Canada terminology, you know? For us is, we are speaking about joint programs, and one of the elements could be the final qualification that could be a double or multiple degree or a joint degree. So we use double or multiple instead of dual, only to be clear on the terminology.
all right, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we see a lot of, especially UK universities that have programs offered in conjunction with other universities in other countries, so the student actually gets 2 degrees,
Yeah,
2 diplomas. So,
double degree.
yeah, so that's a big problem for those of us in North America, trying to figure those out, yeah.
If you don't find any connection also on the paper among the program that is unique program is a problem.
Okay. So, for example, the minimum workload for the first and second cycle is generally set by the federal government in each country. It's generally, it's not true in within each country, but I do have a whole chart on, it's chart number 5 in the handouts that tell you which countries have a centrally set minimum number of credits for first and second cycle studies. There are no, when I get to third cycle, it's not, there are no centrally set because they're so different. There's, doctoral studies are so different in how they're taught and how they're assessed. So it's only first and second cycle studies. Okay. From what I understand, from my research, I could be wrong, Luca, only Kazakhstan, once again, Kazakhstan does everything different. Russia and the UK are the only 3 countries that do not have a centrally set minimum number of credits. Okay. So we'll get to doctoral studies. So doctoral studies were first recognized, as I said, in 2005 as the third cycle. The Salzburg principles, once again, something that came out of the Salzburg communique, was that they set specific guidelines for doctoral study. And they also decided that they recognized that doctoral students were early researchers or first stage researchers. So third cycle study in most programs in Bologna signatory countries have a strong research foundation. They will not, usually, many of them do not have taught courses. It's based on, you give your dissertation thesis topic, it's accepted, and then you just go to town and start working on it, and then you defend a thesis. So it's very rarely that you'll see actual course, ECTS credits for courses completed in Bologna signatory countries, but you'll see the ECTS credits awarded for dissertation study. Now, the Salzburg principles also said that the doctoral studies should have an appropriate duration, and they said 3 to 4 years. So this is what, they're not required to follow this. They're saying this should be an appropriate duration, 3 to 4 years. So it's up to each institution or country to decide what they consider to be appropriate, all right? And it also depends on the field of study. So, some programs might require 5 years. Some might require only 3 years. So it all depends on what the student is actually studying. A very small proportion of students actually move from second cycle studies to third cycle studies, which I found very surprising to me, only 5%. I don't know what the statistics are for the US and Canada. I guess I should have checked that, but Rebecca, you're the doctoral student.
Well, I think we need to remember that the third cycle
Yeah.
2000, later in the development,
Mhm.
because for so many years, research and institutional academics were really separated
Mhm.
in the just kind of the cultural mindset, the concept. So researchers could really take, however long process. So it's really a newer.
And they still take those. They want.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But anyway, so I mean, it's also been, the statistics also show that the number of doctoral students, the third cycle students, has been slowly decreasing in Bologna signatory countries. For example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kazakhstan, again, we should also say that Macedonia recently changed their name to Northern Macedonia, which I did not know. So Northern Macedonia, Malta, and Montenegro, less than 1% of their students go on to third cycle studies. But it's above 6% in Czech Republic, Germany, Finland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, and Sweden. Switzerland. Most countries use ECTS credits in the third cycle. Some of it use in every single element of the course. In their research and their taught courses and their dissertation topic. Some of them will only use it if they have a taught component to the program, they'll only use it there. So it all depends on the program. So if you don't see credits for the taught courses, it doesn't mean they weren't awarded. They just don't do it. So it all depends on the institution.
I just want to make a note of that too, that, culturally speaking, a PhD is a really academic type of degree where and there becomes a distinction between a learned doctoral program or a research doctoral program, so courses work versus the research. And we can think of it in terms of theory versus practical education, where in the United States, especially, a PhD is more of a theoretical based. You're creating or you're doing something new, something that has not been researched in the past, whereas a practical based doctoral program, like for example the EDD, Doctor of Education, that I'm in, you may be researching and working on something that does already exist and a sort of a new aspect of that phenomenon. So there becomes a disconnect between academic third cycle and theoretical third cycle. Does that make sense?
All right, thanks. We got a boogie here. We're running behind here. So I just also want to say Finland is the only country that has absolutely no regulations on the length or the workload required in a doctoral program.
They give you a sword at the end of it.
Chart 4 shows you all the countries where ECTS credits are used in the third cycle. Integrated programs are combined first and second cycle studies, and these are usually in fields where it's a regulated field, i.e. you need a license to practice. So it's things like medicine, dentists, architects, pharmacists, engineers, lawyers. So that's where you're going to see an integrated program. It's a first and second degree. They end up with a second cycle qualification. Okay. All right. Right, programs outside of the Bologna structure. So this is a relatively new thing within the Bologna, is figuring out what do you do with these programs that really don't fit into a first cycle or second cycle. These programs are usually related to the first cycle, but they lead to a second cycle qualification. So, for example, Ireland has the higher diploma, all right? It's built on the first cycle qualification, but it's going to be a second cycle qualification, even though it's only 60 ECTS, okay? So we have, Malta has this Bachelor of Accountancy, so you have to have a first cycle degree in accounting, but you need to finish this Bachelor of Accounting to actually practice as an accountant in Malta. So they're all bunches of different things. Let's see. I'm sorry, my notes. These you'll find these programs in about a quarter of the Bologna signatory countries, and they may or may not be included in the national qualifications framework. So just because you find one of these qualifications and it's not in the national qualifications framework doesn't mean it's not legit. They just might not have been included in the framework, because sometimes it's because they're so new, and they just can't fit them in there. They're usually at the level 6 on the National Qualifications Framework, which Marianne will talk about later. So I've got some examples up there here. There are some 2-year programs that are for example, in Luxembourg and Netherlands, which are not considered to be short cycle. They're just 2 years. So they're first cycle, but they're 2 years. So it's this Diplôme d'études supérieures générales from Luxembourg and the associate degree from the Netherlands. Okay. Some of these programs might be intermediate qualification actually within the second cycle. For example, the postgraduate diploma from Ireland. It's between the master's program and the bachelor's program. So it's second cycle, but it's not the final second cycle qualification in that country. And in some countries, these programs they're actually in the second cycle, but they will not lead to third cycle doctoral studies. So that's the end of the road for these people unless they go back and get a different kind of second cycle qualification. And these are some examples up here from Albania, Croatia, and Scotland. All right, so we talked a little bit about, Marianne and Rebecca talked a little bit about short cycle programs. Where are my notes? But I should actually go back and verify that these strange, don't fit into the Bologna structure, are usually offered based on labor market needs. So if this is some particular need for the labor market, institutions will start offering these types of programs. There might be a need for them because of professional regulation and registration requirements. So if you want to practice a certain profession, they're going to require you to do one of these outside of the Bologna process qualifications. And it's also based on requests from students who say, I think we would like to do something like this. My institution, can't you offer me a 60 ECTS credit and blah, blah, blah. So it's all, they can be, the reason that there is all for different reasons. So short cycle programs. In 2003, the different education ministers asked the Bologna follow-up group to explore how do we fit these short programs into the higher education, or if they could be linked to first cycle qualifications. And so finally, they met in Dublin, and the Dublin descriptors finally started to reference short cycle qualifications. But it's still there's still not clarity within the Bologna Declaration or the Bologna Process implementation of exactly what these short cycle programs are. So I think that's something that's continuing the discussion on what they are.
And these are primarily vocational type stuff.
You're ahead of me. I'm getting there. However, even though this is saying that these ministers of education are saying that they are committed to continuing discussions on how where they're gonna fit, where these short cycle programs are gonna fit in the overarching EA qualifications framework. So Marianne's gonna talk about that, how there's the EHA qualifications framework and compared to the national qualifications framework. So gotta figure out where to put those in. So the Bologna communique actually recognized that really is these short cycle programs, and they also figured out, decided that in countries they had to have proper recognition. They just couldn't continue to ignore them. So they have to be there has to be some assurance that these short cycle programs will be recognized in the country. And it's just very important, especially when these students who have finished these short cycle programs want to continue on and get further education. And in countries where short cycle programs aren't offered, and once again, they have to have recognition and mechanisms for recognizing these programs. So if somebody does a short cycle program in one country and goes back to another country where it's not offered, those countries have to have some sort of mechanism to recognize that, yeah, this is a legitimate program and how it fits into our educational system. So there are two types of short cycle programs. There are some that are short cycle higher education and short cycle tertiary education. So we have to be very clear about the difference between higher education and tertiary. Tertiary means anything out after secondary school. Higher education means formal education in a university level institution, okay? So short cycle tertiary education is usually vocational education. Sometimes it includes, it's in part of secondary education, or it builds upon concepts or education a student learned in secondary school. So if a student learned a particular profession, for example, teaching, in secondary school, and they want to go on and do a short cycle program, I'm not sure if there are any short cycle programs in teaching. The program may build upon concept they learned in secondary school. The workload is measured in clock hours and not ECTS credits. So you will not see ECTS credits for these, and that's going to be the big clue to tell you that this was a tertiary education program and not a higher education program. Also, where they actually completed the program will be probably the biggest clue. But if you're not quite sure, you'll see that. So once again, you'll not see ECTS credits, but you'll just see clock hours completed in each particular component or learning outcome of that program. These are two examples from Bosnia and Herzegovina and Cyprus of a short cycle tertiary education program. Now, when you get to short cycle higher education, these are programs that are offered in a university level institution. Might not say university, but we're talking about that level. And students can go from these short cycle programs and progress into a first cycle program. They may or may not be given advanced standing. It all depends on the program and the institution. Let's see. There are about half the countries in the Bologna Process Signatory have some sort of short cycle higher education program. In some countries, as I said, will give partial recognition, some will give full recognition, some will give no recognition. For example, Ireland, Scotland, and the French community of Belgium will all give very limited recognition of short cycle programs that are completed there. Malta is the only country where short cycle programs are not generally recognized in first cycle programs. Those students have to start from the very beginning in a first cycle program. So sorry, you finished a short cycle program in Malta, you got to start right from the first year of a first cycle program. So yeah, it's too bad. So this is just a chart of programs where, countries where short cycle programs are considered part of higher education. Okay, so is that clear? Yes, please.
If you find for the distinction about tertiary education, higher education, some European countries, European Union countries use another system of accumulation of credit in a vocational sector. It's called ECVET, E-C-V-E-T. Is European Credits and Transfer System for Vocational and Training. So please note that if you find that ECVET, it means that for us it's not higher education, it's post-secondary or tertiary education.
Great. Phew. We got an hour. It's all up to you, Marianne. I'm sorry, we're gonna be really rushing through this, so,
Does anyone need any candy?
yeah.
We're good on
Okay, all right, here you go,
got Twizzlers.
here you go.
No? Yeah, all right. I knew there'd be some.
Just keep going.
Give them a chance to set themselves up.
I'm going to do the same thing you did. That helps.
Just keep going, just start with
Yep.
your time.
Okay, so we're going to move on to qualifications frameworks, and I think I've been allotted 8 to 10 minutes, so we'll try to move. Oh, it's 5. Okay, fast. So what is a qualifications framework? It's a formalized system of credentials at different levels and how they fit together. So most often we think of, I'm going to use the word old style. We think of that degree structure of bachelor, master, and what ladders into each. These qualification frameworks, though, are a new style. And when I say new style, it's because it describes the qualifications in terms of learning outcomes. Often there are some other components, level and workload are usually included as well, but now there's this additional element of learning outcomes. Oh, sorry, I'll progress through. So it describes what learners should know, understand, and be able to do at each level of the framework. And often we think about upward mobility in a framework. We think of once you've done a bachelor's degree, you can move on and do a master's degree. But I think it's also important to emphasize that you could also have lateral movement in a qualification system, or a framework where if you change your specialty, perhaps you might have to, I always move over before you can move up. So it just kind of depends. As Kate had alluded to before, there are 2 types of frameworks. So you can have national frameworks and overarching frameworks. And so national frameworks are system-specific frameworks. You think of each country having a national framework. And they describe all the qualifications in an education or higher education system and then how they fit together. So we're going to show you a couple of examples in just a few minutes. So Malta, Scotland, the Netherlands, Germany, each has its own national framework. But then you have overarching frameworks, and that's an example of the qualifications framework for the EHEA, or the European Higher Education Area. And an overarching framework is more general in nature than a national framework, and it sets parameters for which national frameworks then can be developed, and it facilitates movement between the systems. So when I had mentioned this new style of qualifications frameworks, it's a shift from institutions to learners. It's a shift from formal procedures to content. So once again, what is an individual should they know and be expected to do at the end of completing a qualification within that framework? There are steps to set up a national framework, so the decision to start by a national body responsible for higher education, setting the agenda, so what's the purpose of our framework going to be? You need to organize the process and identify all the stakeholders. What is the level structure and the corresponding structure? What's it going to look like if you were to develop a national framework? The consultation, so you want to make sure that all the stakeholders within that national context are being consulted. The approval by government, which is usually through legislation, and then the setup, so the division of tasks between the higher education institutions and your quality assurance systems, implement it, and then the final step, if one should so choose, is called self-certification. And that's the final step in developing a national framework, and it demonstrates that the national framework is compatible with that of the QF EHEA. So the national framework that has been created by that jurisdiction is compatible. And it establishes legitimacy, acceptance, and trust. And there are specific criteria and procedures, which I'm not going to go into, but the competent authorities of the country verify that the national framework, as I said, is compatible to the overarching one. And usually in that self-certification, it's going to exclude experts from other countries. So they're going to come and make sure that it is compatible with the overarching framework. I'm going to go through some examples. Oh, I've got one more slide. How exciting. So I had mentioned before that it's about learning outcomes, but typically level and workload are often included, and we'll show that in the examples. It identifies often both academic and your vocational credentials. And qualifications could be at the same level, but have different characteristics. So some could be for employment, whereas some could be more academic in nature. And what you'll see in the qualifications frameworks that we have, it's not necessarily just for higher education. So some of them include their secondary school credentials as well. So you just have to, when you're looking at a jurisdiction, you're going to want to orient yourself to what, if it's just higher education they're talking about, if they're talking about their whole education system and the corresponding levels. The interesting part, too, is they all look a little different, and the graphics are a little bit different. And if you have the opportunity to explore these websites, if you haven't already done so in your work, often they're quite interactive, and you can hover over a certain level, and it can tell you what the learning outcomes are. So some of them are a little bit more interactive in nature, where some of them, those are printed out. So this is an example of the qualifications framework for Scotland. And as you can see, they have the SQA qualifications, which are the Scottish Qualifications Authority. They're the examinations, the qualifications for higher education institutions, and they also have the apprenticeship style. So this has included several different levels, but also in different areas. Malta, you'll see, it's probably a better looking slide in your slide deck than I can see. It's here, but you can see how they have both the vocational or the vet track as well as the academic track, and then your bachelor's, master's, doctorate. So 6, 7, and 8 at the top. Most of them that I've looked at are 8 levels, but you'll notice Scotland had 12. So it just really depends, but 6, 7, and 8, you'll hear a lot of, a bachelor style is a 6. And there's some notes usually too at the bottom. So this one suggests that that a VET level 1 qualification should have the same parity of esteem as the general education level 1 school leaving certificate. So usually there's notes on how it should be used as well. Germany, the staircase with the vocational qualifications going up the middle. And so as you can see, once again, they're all a little bit different, but using the same level. And if you usually, when you're on the website, you can see the learning outcomes and the duration as well. And then this is the QFEHEA, so the overarching framework for the European higher education area. And you can see down the left-hand side, it's first cycle qualification, the learning outcomes are in the middle, and then the ECTS credits, or that workload, what is the typical duration. And as you see the learning outcomes, they progress as you go from the first cycle to the second cycle qualification, and then finally to the third. And now we're going to go on to diploma supplement and just keep moving along, because
Phew. Are we going too fast? I'm sorry, too quickly. I should use appropriate proper English. Are we going too quickly? I did teach ASL, so I should know that. No? Okay. All right. If we're going too quickly, just raise your hand and say, whoa, stop the clock. You're going really too quick. I'm not getting it. But the diploma supplement, I think, is the thing that's the best part of the Bologna process, especially for those of us who are looking at these who are evaluating credentials from or qualifications from someone from a Bologna signatory country. In our work as credential evaluation agency, we rely on these a lot to give us a lot of information that we might not be able to find so easily on a particular institution website or a country Ministry of Education website. So the diploma supplement was developed somewhere between 1996 and 1998 as a result of discussions between the Council of Europe, the European Commission, and UNESCO. Is it UNESCO CEPES or CEPES? CEPES, something I never have to say. They wanted to have a detailed description of the study components and the learning outcomes a student had achieved in a particular qualification. And they wanted this to help other higher education institutions and employers, recognition centers, regulatory agencies, and other stakeholders understand what this particular qualification meant, what the qualification, what skills and competencies were represented by this particular qualification. So in 2005, these education ministers got together and they agreed, yeah, we should start issuing something which they decided to call a diploma supplement to all students who graduate, and it should be at no cost. However, there's always a however with these things. Montenegro and Serbia charge students. So if you ask a student from Montenegro and Serbia, could you please give me your diploma supplement? They might say no because they have to pay for it. I don't know what the exact charge is. It might be cost prohibitive, so that's they might not want to do that. The diploma supplement is issued in the language of that particular country as well as a widely spoken language, and it's usually English is the second language it can be issued in. However, the language, it's not automatically issued in that second widely spoken language. So students in some countries actually have to request that they get the second diploma supplement in that widely spoken language. And some countries will charge a fee, even though the original language diploma supplement will be free, they will charge a fee if the student wants the second diploma supplement in that widely spoken language, which is understandable because it involves translation and that sort of thing. So, for example, I give up here Estonia, Latvia, Macedonia, Poland, Serbia, Slovakia. Students actually have to request, they're not going to automatically get that. The latest statistics as of 2016, 2017, and we'll have new ones in 2020, is that 44 countries, so almost all countries, Bologna signatory countries, issue diploma supplements to first and second cycle graduates. And so I have the list up here. Belarus, as we'll find out, poor Belarus is just not in the diploma supplement. I'm sorry. Belarus is just really not into the diploma supplement business yet. However, there's also institutional autonomy in the actual, can you see? Sorry, I've got a big head, I'm sorry. No, I mean, literally, not figuratively. Institutional autonomy in these, in issuing a diploma supplement. They don't have to. So, like I said, Belarus just has absolutely no diploma supplement developed yet. So if you get one from Belarus, I'd be really suspect because they just haven't done it yet. The UK will issue either or the actual diploma supplement or the higher education report or HERE. So if you get and I've got an example here of a HERE, don't dismiss it, that's just an alternative to the diploma supplement. And it'll depend on the institution whether they'll do the diploma supplement or a HERE.
And I think the HERE incorporates everything that's in the diploma.
Yes, exactly. I don't know if you hear that. Everything that you would find in a diploma supplement will be found in a HERE. So it's not a lesser document. It's an alternative. It's just, I don't know why. Yes, sometimes it does have more, and I've got examples of the here. So like, as I said, they're automatically issued except Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, Kazakhstan, and Spain. The student actually has to request it. They're not going to automatically be given it. They can get one, but they have to ask for it. Ireland does not issue a diploma supplement for integrated programs. So if you get a diploma supplement for a dentist from Ireland, be suspect because they do not issue the diploma supplements for integrated programs. So short cycle graduates, it's not automatic that they, if you finish a short cycle program, it's not automatic that you're going to get a diploma supplement. There are some, they will be issued to, I have a list of countries here that they'll automatically issue to it. There's some countries that will issue to some of them. So it all depends on what the country is. Third cycle graduates, once again, they're not universally issued. It all depends on the program. And there is a chart in your supplementary materials that would list the countries where a diploma supplement will be issued for third cycle programs. So it's kind of frustrating for sometimes for those who do credentials evaluation when you get these third cycle and they've done a doctoral program, you get the diploma and it doesn't list what they studied. We have no idea. If you had the diploma supplement, we'll list the whole program with the learning outcomes, and you always have to ask the student, you've got this beautiful doctor of philosophy, but I mean, it's like the United States. Once again, you have a doctor of philosophy, it doesn't say what you studied. So, and we don't issue a diploma supplement. We'll issue transcripts for the United States, so it's clear on there. Canada, we get the transcripts. So that's the frustrating part with countries that don't issue diploma supplements for graduate students, for doctoral students. So you can all read this. They're all, 8 different sections, and this will be universal in a diploma supplement. They'll have each of these different sections. The level of information you'll get in each of these sections depends on the institution or the country. Some countries, for example, the qualification function or the qualification level, you'll get paragraphs and paragraphs, which are very helpful sometimes. And then some countries you'll get just a sentence. So there's no rhyme or reason. There's no standardization of the depth of information in each of these. So we'll just go over a few examples. This is my favorite one. I think the Spain diploma supplements are beautiful. I mean, they're physically beautiful, and they give you a lot of information. And they also, in some countries, I should say, they'll issue them in the native country language and English. So this one happens to be a bilingual from Spain, so it's in Spanish and in English. So the student didn't have to ask for the separate English version of it. So you will find that in some of these. So the nice thing too is this section where it gives you all the information where this qualification lands within the ISED descriptors of that country. This one I skipped about 4 pages. This was a really long one, but I just thought it was really pretty. Here's an example, of HEAR, H-E-A-R, from University of Glasgow. Okay, you'll see it's exactly the same information you'd find in a diploma supplement, but it's just that information. This is another thing that we rely upon a lot, especially in countries where you're not really, Scotland is, their higher education is very, very different from the rest of the UK. And so you have all the information about the higher education system and also the grading system that was used. Okay. So Getting into technology. There are several countries where these diploma supplements are actually a digital document, but it's still a paper document in almost every single country. So they haven't caught up with the technology part of issuing a diploma supplement. So the UK is the only country that's actually developed an electronic version of the diploma supplement, but it hasn't been universally implemented by all universities within England. So if you do get an electronic version from the UK, yes? Well, Digitary is the transfer system that some institutions use. That's a company that does it for them, all right? But it would be a digital version, okay? So if you do receive a digital version from the UK, it's probably legit. But once again, not every university or higher education institution has developed a digital version, but the UK is the only one that has developed one. Sweden is in the process of developing it for all universities to use, so it's not going to be up to each university to get their own version, so Sweden's going to have a national version for everyone. Italy, some are working on this. There's a national digitalization project, and some universities are participating in it. And Spain and the Holy See are starting to examine it. So you can see that there are just very few countries that are even thinking, or have even done it, or even thinking about issuing electronic or digital versions of the diploma supplement. So if you get a diploma supplement from, let's say, France, that's digital, I would verify that one.
And how will this look? Will this be like a link that the student emails us? Will it be a QR code?
I don't know how it's submitted because I've never seen one.
Right.
Just because there's so few that are being issued. So I think this is going to be something we're going to see more and more in the future. We're going to be seeing that, especially with the Groningen Declaration, where that's a big part of the Groningen is the digitalization of student records. So I think, once again, that's going to be a big thing. But has anybody seen a digital? Yeah, okay.
Not for this specific program. It's just interesting. For the first time I got a CBSE digital from India and a QR code, but you needed a specific app to view it. And to download the app, you had to be the India Apple Store. And so it was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, this
Yeah.
isn't going to work.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's the point. I think that's probably going to change. And there's our QR codes on a lot of South American, this is getting at South Americans, you can digitally, but anyway, that's another discussion, right? So what is the benefit of the diploma supplement? Well, it's a common framework. Everybody understands what the diploma supplement is. It allows them to compare the studies, the qualifications a student has earned in a country compared to their own country. It gives academic recognition of a qualification for employment or for further study. So if an employer gets a diploma supplement and they're savvy enough to know and look on their national qualifications framework, they'll understand what this student has done. It also, which I found very interesting, improves visibility of an institution. So if you went to a school that wasn't very well known in a particular country and you go to another country, people are going to start learning about your institution. So other employers will say, I've never heard of this school. You went to Cates University in London. I've never heard of it, but if you have a diploma and supplement and it says that I give off-qual recognized qualifications, yeah, it's a legit school. And once again, other educational institutions will get to know your school. Okay. Now, I think why we're all here is, how does it help us as credentials evaluators? Once it helps us, the big thing is it just explains what this university is, or this qualification is. What was the entrance requirement? Did it require secondary study? Did it require some sort of first cycle qualification to be admitted? How long was it? Usually it'll tell you, the Russian diploma supplements will tell you it in years, how how long that qualification was. Some will give you the ECTS, and some might give you clock hours or both. So it's a really good way to figure out just what is this if you've never seen it before. It'll tell you what level they are on the National Qualifications Framework, and usually they will have some sort of descriptor of the National Qualifications Framework on the actual diploma supplement. But if they don't, you can go back and research and find out that particular country's qualifications framework. It will give you the grading scale they used. Did they use the ECTS scale, or did they have 4 different scales like they did in Russia? So that also helps you. And the big thing, I think, is the whole chart they give on the country's educational system. So you can, that's in just another place where you can find information about where that particular qualification fits within the national educational system. All right. So before I go on to verification, because I want to give Luca enough time to do his section, and we've got a little bit more if we have time, but it's not that important if we don't do it. Any questions on the diploma supplement? How many people think it's wonderful? Great, okay, thanks. And you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, this is all very good for graduates, but what happens if a student just wants to transfer to another institution? He doesn't get a diploma supplement.
Right. The question is, what do you do with a student who hasn't actually finished the qualification? Usually they get transcripts. They won't get the diploma supplement. They'll have transcripts of what they study.
So it's on the receiving institution to evaluate those documents and interpret them as they wish.
Yeah, exactly. It's right. It's the receiving institution has to look at those transcripts without the use of a diploma supplement and use your own references and experience to figure out what to do with them.
Could you say it is appropriate to go to your background? Say you are the receiving institution and you have a graduate previously that came to your institution. Can you use the same, like the other student's diploma supplement to
Right. Well, the question was is that if you receive a student who has incomplete studies, can you go back and use a diploma supplement for a previous student? Yes and no. It depends on when that student finished the old student, because things change. You could probably use it as a place to start, but as we know, programs change, length of study changes, so it's a good preference period place, but it's not. You shouldn't use that as the de facto information that you need. So another thing that we all deal with is our inauthentic documents. And so how can you verify documents from Bologna signatory program countries? The problem is that there are only 3 countries that have a national verification system. So individual institutions might have mechanisms for verifying their qualifications, but Moldova will, Moldova will verify diplomas that had been awarded 2008 to the present, so there's the website you can use. Ukraine will do diplomas that have been issued 2015 to present. Turkey does have a system, but unfortunately, you need the Turkish identification card to access the database. So if you know somebody that's got a Turkish identification card that can help you do that, that's the only way you're going to verify these documents. So once again, individual institutions might have online verification systems, but these are the only countries that have a national database to verify any diplomas issued by any higher education institution. So I just want to, I think the next slides can wait, but we wanted to give Luca enough time to talk about what's going on in the future with the Bologna process. So, Luca?
Thank you. Thanks, Emilian. I present you some debate that is ongoing debate on the Bologna process, on the future of European higher education area. As you probably know, next year, 2020, there will be another communiqué, their own communiqué, in June. and we are working on it. The drafting committee are working on it, and so I present you the actual work done within the BFUG and the future of the entire area. No, okay, sorry. Okay, of course you know that here.
I'm sorry, this was not included in the original document you got. We will send you the new version, so you don't have to take pictures or whatever, you can take notes. So you'll get the latest version later. And this will be in it.
Yeah, you already. Yeah, it's fine. It's my fault. It's my fault. Okay. This is of course the part of the countries, as you already understand. We celebrate last June in Bologna the 20th anniversary of the Bologna Declaration, and we will have a very huge debate with more than 1,000 participants. We have a very, very interesting parade of more than 200 rectors that pass with the ermeline, that you said, the academic dress, okay?
Academic regalia.
Oh, very, very interesting. In the city, it was very, very good. Anyone died because it was June, and then the average of the age was very high, but everyone was okay, everything. Also for the bathroom, everything was okay. No, but because we start to dress them at 1 p.m. and then the parade was at 4, so you can imagine that was pretty. 200 rectors, it was pretty interesting. But on the website, you can find the video that we prepared for that occasion, and all the relevant information with the video speakers, etc. We have 45 speakers speaking about different topics. We have in the involvement of students, etc. But of course, this is the actual work plan for the 2 years, 2018-2020, based on the Paris Communiqué. Each communiqué gives to the BFUG the roadmap in order to create the work plan. So we create that work plan with all the part of the Paris Communiqué. And then we have different advisory group, a working group, a coordination group, and this is the advisory group 1 on social dimension. Those are the members. The social dimension is is a huge part of the Bologna process, and is what we call in Europe the third mission of the university, to the impact to the society and to the labor market, to all the something that is not the research, the academic world, but the other impact to the society. And this is the group on learning and teaching, because one of the main part of the Paris Communiqué is dedicated on learning and teaching, that I show you something also including the recognition part that is very interesting, new learning and teaching path or methodologies, etc. That is the coordination group 1 on global policy dialogue. They are in charge to prepare the global policy statement for the Global Policy Forum. You know that there is the ministerial conference, and within the ministerial conference, we used to organize a global policy forum with a specific statement approved by all the ministers present, not only from EHEA country, but also outside the process. And this is the group 1 on monitoring for the monitoring report that we are going to publish in 2020 for the details and data related to 2019, okay? Because then we elaborate the data. So in 2020, you will have new data and details. For example, because in Paris we introduced the short cycle, we will have data on short cycle as well. So short cycle right now is an official part of the process, okay? Or with other data and details. This is very interesting. This is a new group that is called Bologna Implementation Coordination Group, BICG. Why we decide in Paris or minister decide to have this group? Because we say, yes, of course, it's a voluntary process, but we have 3 pillars that you have to implement at national level if you want to participate at that process. And what are the three pillars? Quality assurance mechanism, Lisbon Recognition Convention, and the qualifications framework and ECTS. And so we create 3 thematic peer group on those 3 pillars, and one, as you can see, the peer group B, and one of the co-chair of the peer group B is the vice director of CIMIA, Chiara Finocchetti, will be here from tomorrow, so you can speak also with her if you are interested in the work done by that group, is with the commitment number 2, Lisbon Recognition Convention, and we are working on different topics in that group. As you can see here, this is the composition of the group, and then they have 3 meetings on document fraud and digitalization, on substantial differences, and on information provision. The 3 points that we are working on for the recognition work. Those are the 3 priorities. Something that we called automatic recognition in Europe. It means, or within the EHCA countries, it means that is not an immediately recognition, but it means that if you have an official bachelor in your country, our starting point is that this is a first cycle qualification that we start to recognize as a bachelor. If it's a different story if you can admit it or not in an institution. It's not automatic the fact that you are admitted, okay? But the evaluation starts on the fact that you have an official qualification for another country. We automatically recognize the fact that a US bachelor is a US bachelor. So this is with all the characteristics that you show at national level. Then we are working on something that is very interesting, that is different to the diploma supplement, is a common assessment report. As you can, you saw that there are, or we identify within the Lisbon Recognition Convention with the subsidiary text, the 5 elements of a qualification. Of course, if I already evaluate a qualification from Ecuador, okay, why another credential evaluation service or center in any CNARIC's world in Europe have to evaluate again? I don't, or assess the elements of the foreign system. Then speaking about the evaluation, the last part of the evaluation, you can or you cannot enter in Italian universities. This is a part, very, very national part. But the fact that the Ecuador institution that award the qualification is official, the level is that one, the duration is that one, etc. Why I cannot accept the evaluation made by another center? Only that explain the elements of the foreign qualification. So we are working on that model. We are don't know right now if that model or document will be approved by minister or not, but it's something interesting to help automatic recognition or automatic to help our daily job, okay, in this sense. And on digitalization, there will be a specific workshop here during our TAICEP conference on digitalization. I will participate on it as well with Chiara, my colleague, and only to show you also that there are also examples of using of blockchain technology for the verification of qualification, etc. And we are very involved in that kind of things in Italy, for example. But we are interested in that part also because the Paris communique stated that we need a digital solution for the diploma supplement for other elements to encourage or have automatic recognition of qualifications. Some information about the Ministerial Conference, 24-25 of June 2020 in Rome. And the Bologna Policy Forum will be in Rome as well during the conference. Please note that this is the conference center and some details. We are going to organize also a global summit on higher education because, and thanks to the fact that we have 48 ministers there, And we will have also the other delegation from other countries in the world. We are going to organize also a global summit on higher education for the dialogue among experts in different fields. And the agenda is not finalized yet, but I can say to you all that one of the main part of workshops will be dedicated to recognition. Because as you know, there is the Global Convention of UNESCO that will be approved that November. Unfortunately, you know that US is not part of UNESCO anymore, but it's a global convention, UNESCO Global Convention on Recognition. I was part of the editing committee for that convention. It's very, very new and good one in this sense. And so we have a lot of things to discuss also in the recognition world, also the part related to the digitalization. So please note that you as an expert can participate free of charge to that global summit, if you like. And that global summit is also connected to the Dubai 2020 Expo, because in Dubai, they are going to organize a global summit on education as well in March 2021. So it means that in that sector, at global level, we start to collaborate, everyone, on different topics. Those are the crucial and main topics, of course, for us, migrant and refugees crisis, or to speak about that kind of topic. The fact to include research in the European higher education area. As you heard, the PhD or third cycle level was included after the process, but is a part of the research. That doesn't mean that the research world is included in EHEA. So if you see the work plan, there is the dialogue between the EHEA and the European research area, because research is formally outside the process, and we want to include research in the process, of course. And then there are also the Sustainable Development Goals that are very important to speak about, and the relation with other countries and international processes with Council of Europe and at Council of Europe and UNESCO level. And this is the last one, that only to explain you the word ciao. You know that in Italy, ciao is very famous, but probably you don't know the meaning, the roots. The roots is a dialect word in Venetian, in Venice, the dialect for Venice, that is mean slave, ciao, vostro, your slave, but it means at your service, and it is the Italian attitude to work and to have a relation with others. So this is my suggestion is to come to Rome with us. Thank you. Okay. No, thank you.
Almost there. So we thought it would be important to talk about some of the issues that credentials evaluations and university admissions officers deal with when it comes to Bologna process credentials. So 3-year degrees. I know we talked about this briefly, but what do we do with them? I mean, we're not going to have this discussion here, because that's a whole other decision. But yeah. But yeah, what are they equivalent to in your institution or your country? You know, I'm not asking you to give me the answer. Just think about this. Are they suitable for graduate admission? So that's something all credentials evaluators, all admissions officers struggle with, is how do they fit into the North American educational systems? Because I think we're all here, we all represent North America. These short cycle programs, what do we do with them? I mean, they're outside of higher education, but they're legitimate educational programs. What are they equivalent to in the United States, or in North America, or in our institution? Do we admit students that have finished these types of programs? What, if we're a credential evaluator, what do we recommend of an equivalency for these institutions? Do we recommend transfer credit? Do we give them advanced standing? Are they even suitable for admission to your institution? So this is, I think you have to decide whether it was tertiary. Would you accept a short cycle program that was completed in a tertiary setting? Or would this is just things you have to discuss or think about, because these are all issues that come up with these credentials. These integrated degrees, how do they fit in, you know? For those of us who are from the United States, a medical doctor, you have to have a undergraduate degree, and then you go on to 4 years of medical school. But yet you have somebody from an integrated program that has done a total of 6 years of education compared to the 10 years that a medical doctor in the United States would have finished before they were licensed to be a doctor. So what are these equivalencies? How do they fit into the particular another country's educational system? And then another thing that's happening is there are a lot of countries are reforming their educational systems to mirror Bologna process countries. And you're going to see this is most prevalent in my experience in Francophone African countries, where they have changed their systems to mirror the LMD, Licence Master Docteur system of France. For example, Morocco, until 2003, and you can go to our session on the educational system in Morocco on Wednesday, and we can tell you all about it, but their licence represented 4 years. But then they changed it in 2003 to 3 years to mirror the LMD system in France. You'll often see transcripts that say ECTS, so they are using ECTS credits. They're not using, I haven't seen them using the ECTS grading scale. They use their own native grading scales, but you are seeing transcripts with ECTS. I think these countries are doing this to ease student mobility, especially for Francophone Africa, because a lot of these students do go on to do additional study in France. So if they have a system that is mirroring France, it makes it easier for their students to go on. And countries are adopting national qualifications frameworks, which is great for us as credentials evaluators and admissions officers. It helps us understand where these qualifications fit into particular countries. For example, Australia has a beautiful one, but I understand they're in the process of changing it. So as pretty as it is, it's going to change. Kenya. And it's fun, and it's what I enjoy looking at the qualifications frameworks is how different they are. We were just talking about how beautiful the Irish one was. Philippines has one. Jamaica has a qualifications framework. So just Google or go into. I found if you go into Google Images and just go into Google Images as just something fun and do qualifications framework, and there you're going to get a gazillion different examples of these. So we even had this unaccredited institution in Curacao. We got a student and gave us this transcript, and they use ECTS. So that's the end of the workshop right now, but just a little bit of housekeeping before Rebecca goes on. Once again, we do have certificates of attendance. If you registered after October 14th, we do not have a certificate, but never fear, you will get one mailed to you, okay? If you did already register for the Bologna Process Certificate, come see me. I have your login information because you need that to get on. It tells you where to go and get the login information for that. If you haven't registered yet, but you do register now, because you have to register before November 20th. After that, you have to pay. So, I mean, you're going to get a free, nice, and they're beautiful certificates. I'll get an email, and I will register for that, and I'll email you your login information, okay? The updated version of the workshop will be emailed to you, so never fear if you didn't get to it, you're going to get to that. So, our contact information is here, and I'll speak for myself, and I think I'll speak for everybody. If you ever have a question, please email us. We might not have the answers, or we'll refer you to Luca.
can I get some technical assistance, actually, so that I can get something up on the screen? We don't have to record anymore at this point. But while that's happening, I